The sky over the Masai Mara didn't just rain, it bruised heavy. Charcoal, colored clouds had been gathering since noon, choking out the sun, until finally they cracked open. Down below, in a secluded clearing hidden by a ring of whistling thorn acacias, Kefa wiped water and sweat from his eyes. He was alone, or at least he prayed he was. In his hands he held a wooden spade, the handle polished smooth by years of use. But today, the spade felt heavier than lead. It felt like a betrayal. He wasn't planting a tree. He wasn't digging a well. Kefa, a ranger who had patrolled these plains for 15 years, was burying his father. Not his biological father, but the man who had taught him everything. Mosey, the old ranger, the man who knew the language of the wind and the secrets of the grass. Mosey had died quietly in his sleep at the outpost, and his final request was specific. Asterisks, do not take me to the city. Put me in the ground where the lions walk. I want to feed the soil that fed me. Asterisk, so Kefa had brought him here. No ceremony, no government officials. Just a shallow grave in the middle of the storm. Kefa patted the final shovel of wet, red clay onto the mound. He dropped the spade, his knees gave way, and he collapsed into the mud, the exhaustion finally overtaking him. He closed his eyes, letting the rain wash away the tears he had been holding back for 2 days. For a moment, the only sound was the drumming of the storm against the earth. Then the bushes behind him shuddered. It wasn't the wind. Kefa's instinct, sharpened by a decade in the bush, screamed at him, freeze, asterisk. He stopped breathing. He turned his head, millimeters at a time, looking over his left shoulder, 10 yards away, parting the tall, wet oat grass. Like a curtain, a massive, black-maned male lion. This was not a tourist sighting. This was a confrontation. The lion was enormous, a prime dominant male in the peak of his power. His mane was thick and dark, matted with rain and burrs, framing a face scarred by territorial battles. He moved with that terrifying, liquid grace that only apex predators possess, silent, despite weighing 400 pounds. Kefa's heart hammered against his ribs so hard, he thought the lion could hear it. He recognized this lion. Every ranger in the sector knew him. They called him Fordi Baraza, the king of the Western Ridge. Baraza was known for his aggression. He had killed 3 challengers in the last year alone to hold his territory. He was not a pet, he was a killer, and Kefa was kneeling on the ground, unarmed, offering his exposed back to the king. Asterisk, why is he here? Asterisk, Kefa's mind raced. Lions usually hunker down in deep thickets during storms. They hate the rain. For Baraza to be out here, walking openly in the deluge, meant something was wrong. Or perhaps he was hunting. The lion took a step forward. The soft thimbai squelched of his paw, pressing into the mud, was the loudest sound in the world. Kefa's hand drifted toward the spade. It was a useless weapon against a lion, a toothpick against a tank. But it was all he had. Baraza stopped. He was now only 5 meters away. His golden eyes didn't lock onto Kefa's throat. They drifted past Kefa. They locked onto the fresh mound of earth. The lion let out a sound that wasn't a roar, but a chuff, a sharp expulsion of air through his nose. He sniffed the air. Tasting the scent molecules drifting in the humidity, he smelled the rain. He smelled the fear coming off Kefa, but beneath that, he smelled something else. The scent of the man buried in the ground. Kefa watched, paralyzed, as a flicker of recognition passed through the great cat's eyes. Biology tells us that lions are driven by instinct, hunger, and territory. But those who live in the bush know there is a 4th driver, memory, and Baraza remembered. Kefa's mind flashed back 10 years. The drought of 2014. He was just a rookie then, shadowing Mosey on patrol. The radio had crackled with a report of a trapped animal in Sector 4. When they arrived, the heat was suffocating. Flies were buzzing in a thick cloud, and there, tangled in a poacher's wire snare, was a lion cub. He was barely a year old. The wire had dug deep into his neck, cutting through the skin. The cub was exhausted, dehydrated and terrified. His mother had likely been forced to abandon him to save the rest of the pride. He was waiting to die. Kefir had raised his rifle. Standard protocol said to euthanize an animal in that condition. It was the mercy kill, but Mosey had pushed the barrel down. Asterisk, not this one. Asterisk, Mosey had grunted. For 3 hours the old man had worked, without tranquilizers, relying only on a thick blanket and sheer nerve. Mosey pinned the thrashing cub down. Kefir remembered the smell of the infection, the copper tang of blood, and the high-pitched, angry screams of the cub. Mosey's hands were bitten. His uniform was shredded. But he didn't stop until he cut the wire. He cleaned the wound with his own canteen water. He injected antibiotics from the emergency kit. And then he backed away. The cub didn't run immediately. He stood there, panting, blood matting his neck. He looked at Mosey. Mosey had whispered, asterisk, go, become a king, and remember who gave you your life. Asterisk, that cub had survived. He had grown. He had fought his way to the top of the food chain. He became Baraza. Over the last decade, Mosey had watched him from a distance. They never touched again. They never interacted. But often, when Mosey drove the jeep, Baraza would sit by the roadside, watching the old man pass, never showing aggression, a silent acknowledgement, a debt of blood. Now, 10 years later, the debt had come due. Baraza stepped closer. Kefir flinched, bracing for the attack. But the lion walked past him. Baraza approached the grave. He lowered his massive head, sniffing the wet soil where Mosey lay. He didn't dig, he didn't mark territory. Slowly, heavily, the king of the western ridge collapsed his back legs, then his front. He lay down directly beside the mound of earth, his flank pressing against the mud. He let out a low, mournful groan, a sound that vibrated through the ground and into Kefir's knees. He was mourning. Kefir realized with a jolt that nearly stopped his heart that he wasn't the only one attending this funeral. The sound of a rifle bolt sliding into place cut through the storm. The emotional trance shattered instantly. Kefir spun around, rising to a crouch. On the ridge above them, silhouetted against the grey sky, stood 2 figures. They wore ponchos and carried AK-47S poachers. It wasn't a coincidence. They hadn't stumbled upon the funeral, they had been tracking the lion. The storm, which hid Kefir's presence, had also softened the ground, making Baraza's paw prints easy to follow. They had hunted the king right to his point of vulnerability. One of the poachers laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. He raised his rifle, aiming not at Kefir, but at the lion lying on the ground. A lion's skin was worth thousands on the black market. A ranger's life was worth nothing to men like this. Move away, ranger, the lead poacher shouted over the rain. Walk away and you live. The cat is ours. Kefir looked at Baraza. The lion had risen. His ears were pinned back flat against his skull, a sign of extreme aggression. His tail twitched violently, but he didn't run. He was standing between the grave and the gunman. He was refusing to leave Mosey. Kefir looked at the spade in his hand. Then at the rifles. He had a choice. He could walk away. He could let them take the lion. He could go home to his family. But then he looked at the grave. Mosey would never walk away. Kefir stepped forward. He moved in front of the lion. He raised the wooden spade like a spear, screaming into the rain. No! You will not touch him! The poachers hesitated. They hadn't expected a lone man with a shovel to defend a wild beast. You're crazy, the poacher yelled. I'll shoot you both. Kefir didn't budge. He felt a heat radiating from behind him. Baraza moved. He didn't run away. He moved feasier. The lion stepped forward until his shoulder brushed against Kefir's leg. Man and beast, standing shoulder to shoulder, the sheer absurdity of the image must have terrified the poachers. A wild lion fighting tied alongside a human Baraza, opened his jaws, exposing 2-inch canines, and let out a roar that shook the rain from the air. It was a sonic boom of pure, primal rage. The poacher's nerve broke. Between the crazed ranger, willing to die with a shovel, and the demon lion roaring in the mist, the predators became the prey. They didn't fire. They turned and scrambled back into the bush, slipping in the mud, terrified of the vengeance of the Mara Kefa, watched them disappear, his chest heaving. His legs felt like water. He dropped the spade. The danger was gone. But the lion was still there, slowly. Kefa turned to face Baraza. The adrenaline faded, replaced by the cold reality that he was standing next to a wild apex predator. Baraza stopped roaring. He looked at the direction the poachers had fled, then turned his massive head toward Kefa. Kefa stood frozen, trembling. The lion approached slowly. Deliberately, he leaned in until Kefa could feel the wet, rasping warmth of his breath. Kefa closed his eyes, expecting the bite too. And this is the moment that changed Kefa's life forever. Asterisk, asterisk, Baraza didn't bite. He pressed his forehead gently. To Kefa's chest, he held it there, a heavy, warm pressure against Kefa's heart. A low, vibrating purr echoed through Kefa's ribs. It wasn't just animal behavior, it was a gesture of absolute trust. A thank you, a shared grief. For 10 seconds, the barrier between species dissolved. They were just two soldiers, mourning the same commander. Then Baraza pulled away. He turned back to the grave, circled it once more, and lay down on top of the fresh earth. He didn't leave. As the storm raged on through the night, the lion stayed. He used his own body as a shield, protecting Mosey's grave from the rain, from the scavengers, from the world. Kefa walked away that evening, leaving the lion to his vigil. He knew Mosey was safe. Biologists will tell you that lions are incapable of complex emotions like loyalty or gratitude. They will say it is anthropomorphism. But Kefa knows the truth. He knows that somewhere in the wild heart of Africa, kindness is never forgotten. And he knows that on that rainy afternoon, Mosey did not die alone. He was escorted to the other side by a king. Loyalty is rare. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you trust. And remember to subscribe, because the wild has many more stories to tell.